new word. Okay, so guys, we flip to the back side. Now, just so you guys know, for your homework tonight, I actually made a worksheet instead of doing bookwork. It looks a little bit longer, but mostly the reason why it's a worksheet is because the directions were confusing in the book, and I was having you skip different problems, and you needed graph paper anyway, so I made it a worksheet, like a little packet. So I will give you guys, once we finish notes, I'll give you guys the rest of the time to work on this. But we have to finish up notes to make sure you guys know these different methods. Now, so when you're doing your review, if you need to look at a particular method, do that because you want to make sure you do it correctly on the test. If you practice something wrong, you're going to do it wrong on the test. So you have to make sure you guys are practicing things well. So the other formula we need, it wants us to list the slope and the y-intercept. What they're getting at here is on the test, I'll tell you, graph by slope-intercept form. And when I say that, I mean y equals mx plus b. And I'm assuming this is the way you guys like to graph the most. It's the way I like the most. I think it's the easiest, especially if it's already in that form for me. And these get a little bit progressively tougher on this page here. So this first one is straightforward, ready to be graphed, whereas we have to make it a little bit more difficult as we move on. So it says, graph the following lines, list the slope and the y-intercept. So remember, that's our m and our b. And we like those because the m and b tell us where to begin and how to move. And on the test, I'll have a little spot for you guys to write those. Like if I ask you those questions, I'll have like a little space so you don't forget to tell me. So let's start with b, because that's where we begin. What's the b in this case? The b is -7. And what's the 3? And we can put that 3 over 1, so we have rise over run. So I'm going to begin at -7, so I'm going to put a dot at -7. And then from there, I'm going to do 3 over 1. So we begin at -7 on the y-axis, and then we're going to go up 3 and over 1. Because remember, it's rise over run. So you're kind of like making it like stairs, like going uphill here. And then remember, you can always reverse it as well. So you can go down 3, back 1 as well in case you're like running off the graph. Now, you could really keep doing these dots forever. Now, I just need you guys to get a good smattering of them on the graph. Now, more than 2 points would be ideal, is good, because if you just give me 2 points, the less accurate your line will be. So I'm ready to draw my line. Hopefully I hit a bunch of the dots. Draw arrows on either end to make sure our line shows that it actually is a line that goes on forever. Okay? Now the next one's a little bit trickier because it's not currently in slope-intercept form. So what do we have to do first? What do we have to do in this case? Yeah, go ahead, Clayton. Yeah, we're trying to get that y alone because I want it to be y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to divide by 4 to each side. Now the 5 over 4, don't change that to a decimal. We kind of like 5 over 4 because that's the slope. So what's the b in this case? What's our b? It's 0. There is none. So we actually start this at 0. And then I just said it before, the slope is at 5 over 4, which we actually are fine with having a fraction there. It's probably the only time in math that I think you'd be excited about fractions because it gives you the rise over the run right away. So we're ready to graph this. We're going to start with b, so we're going to start with 0. And then from there, I'm going to go up 5 and over 4. And then I can reverse it and go down 5, back 4. And obviously anything on the test that you guys need to graph, there'll be graph paper there for you. So it's going to be pretty clear that you need to graph. Those of you guys online, sorry, you're probably going to have to print graph paper. And then you have to take a picture of it. Any of you guys who are virtual probably realize testing is kind of annoying in math just because I need to see like what you're up to. So. All right, and letter C, probably the toughest of all three of these. We have to get it in slope-intercept form first. So what are we going to do? Yeah. I'd be X. There you go. I was going to say, I would, yeah, probably, yes. So I'm going to move that X away again because I want it to be in Y equals mx plus b form. So I'm going to move that X away. Now when I write this, I'm going to write the X term first because I want it to be mx plus b. So I have a negative X plus 12. We have to get rid of that 3, so we're going to divide by 3, divide both sides by 3. I'm going to show divide by 3 in all 3 spots so I don't forget about it. So in front of the X, it's going to be a negative 1 over 3. And then 12 over 3, which is just going to be 4. So this one will begin at 4 on the y-axis. But careful, down 1 over 3, when we did this with our zombie activity that we did, a lot of you guys were like getting confused with the negative with a fraction. Down 1 over 3, I always like go to the right to start off with. So I'm going to go down 1, right 3, because remember we have to be going down nice negative. We should be going downhill here. So as opposed to those other two, we're uphill. Sorry, I'm a little bit off on my dots, but hopefully you get the picture. And then in 4.7, this is where we talked about that, that function notation. So just learning that new notation for just basically how to evaluate functions. It just is a weird notation. It looks different than we're used to, but it's not meant to be any tougher. So like my O's for some reason with this. Just doing too fast or something. So function notation, f of x is really just like our y. F of x is not like f times x. It's just another way to write a function or an equation. So in this first one, they're basically asking us two different things in these problems. So this first one says, find f of negative 2 if f of x equals, oh, this equation is weird. Let's fix that. It should be 4f of x. Let's do 4x minus 5. I don't know where that extra equal sign's coming from, so sorry. Ignore that. Hopefully you were like, what in the world just happened? Maybe you assumed and just overlooked it, but fix that in my notes. What is the f of negative 2 telling me to do? What is that saying I should do? This is what we just learned last Thursday. What's that? Yeah, this is telling me x is negative 2. So in this function, I'm going to put in x as negative 2. That's all it's asking us to do in like not like normal English words. Like, I mean, it's like they're using some other weird notation. You kind of got to just go with it. So I'm going to multiply, get a negative 8 minus 5. So I get a negative 13 is the value of the function when x is negative 2. But this next one's asking us to do something a little bit different. So I'm putting that in practice there. This one is saying find x if g of x equals 35. So they're telling us this. And then they're giving us this function. This is asking us something a little bit different. What are we doing instead here? This time we don't know x. So what do we need to do instead? It's not multiplying, nope. Is that what you said, multiply?
That's what it equals.
It's what it equals. So that's what we're replacing. We're going to take this g of x. It's telling us this is 35. So I'm just going to put 35 in place of that g of x. It's just, again, it's a weird notation, and that's why we're learning it. We're kind of like dipping our toes in the water with it. So it's going to be 35 equals 14x minus 7, and we have to now find x. So kind of watching those two notations, and I write this test, and that's partly why I wanted to write the review for you guys too, so it's similar to the test. I'm going to try to use the same wording. I'm not going to try to be tricky with it, so just kind of being comfortable with the two different types of notations here. So we know how to solve something like this. So I'm going to move this 7 over. And then I can divide by 14 to find out x is at 3. Yeah. X ends up being 3. So that's the x value that makes this function equal 35. All right, questions at all? The biggest thing, you guys, you're going to do yourself a disservice if you guys go ahead and do your homework and don't follow directions in terms of using the different methods. So if you don't go and say, like, I'm going to practice graphing by a table because graphing by a table is a pain, I don't want to do that, and I get the points for the homework either way, realize you're not practicing getting yourself ready for the test. Just like you're not practicing your band instrument correctly or practicing your sport correctly. Same thing here. We want to use the methods that you'll have to be tested on. So please make sure you guys follow directions. So if you're not sure on what method I'm asking for, either ask a question or look at your notes, check with a friend even. I mean, making sure you guys are practicing this to get yourself ready for our test. We'll probably have maybe like another test or quiz before the end of the semester, but then our exams are coming up close. So if you guys didn't hear us talking about it, it's basically we have like 11 class periods before exams. And then after the test, it'll only be 10. So it's kind of crazy how fast we are approaching that exam time. So again, the homework looks a little long. It might be a little longer than our typical homework, but you don't have to write the problem down because it's already on the worksheet for you. And it's already got like graph paper attached and stuff. So, but again, please make sure you guys read the directions. Let me know if you don't understand something. And there should be little graphs for everything that you need to graph. And there are little hints and stuff on there to hopefully help you guys. But it's 20 questions. I don't think we have definitely more than 20 minutes here. So hopefully you can get a good chunk of it done. That is your homework for tomorrow.